Hey there, Jets fans. This is Matt Barbado, joined by Max Marcilla from New York Jet Fuel. And it's been a busy week for the New York Jets ever since Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 6 interceptions in a 24-3 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. There's been a lot of news over the past couple of days, and we are here to break it all down for you in a very brief but informative Jet Fuel rundown. First topic we're going to talk about is a pretty dire one. Todd Bowles announced on Wednesday during his press conference that wide receiver Eric Decker, his shoulder injury worsened. And I guess it happened during Sunday's game against the Chiefs. Decker is now going to undergo an MRI on the injury, meaning his status for Sunday's game against the Seattle Seahawks is in question. So, Max, I'm curious. Decker hasn't had a great year. He's only had 9 receptions, and now you add on this injury that might have played a role in why he was sort of limited last weekend. What do you make of this injury, and how concerning is it for the Jets' hopes to get a win in Week 4 against the Legion of Boom in Seattle?
Well, it's a tough break, and not only because of Eric Decker's injury, but you mentioned the opponent that the Jets are going up against. The Seattle Seahawks have arguably the best defense and the best secondary in the NFL. So it's an incredible blow for the Jets. And let's not forget, Jalen Marshall also, he will definitely be out for this game. And for the next couple of weeks, he injured his shoulder. So between Jalen Marshall, who will not be playing, and Eric Decker, who, if he does play, will not be 100%, and Brandon Marshall, who has been battling injuries the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden, this Jets wide receiver unit, they're banged up and they're not producing, and that will hurt them.
Yeah, this is really bad news for the Jets because, he played through the injury and seemed to be fine throughout the week last week. I know he was a little bit limited in practice leading up to the Chiefs game, but then this sort of comes out of left field. And right, you're dealing with Marshall who, he's going to claim he's fine, but he's definitely not 100%. Eric Decker, even if he's healthy and can play, he's not going to be 100%. You lose Jalen Marshall, who, if nothing else, I know he's had fumble issues, but he was another receiver in that offense. Now you're pretty much left with Quincy Enunwa, Brandon Marshall, and now Robbie Anderson could be the guy who steps into the fold, at least in the place of Jalen Marshall. So the Jets are seriously limited at receiver, especially if Decker can't go Sunday. And against a passing defense like Seattle's, where you already know Brandon Marshall's probably going to be locked up against Richard Sherman, and he might even see a double team now that Decker's health is in question. This is a serious blow to the Jets' passing offense coming off of what was a really, really awful week in Kansas City. So I'm not very optimistic that things are going to get much better, even at home against the Seahawks defense that shuts down, number 1 and number 2 receivers when they're at full strength.
Right, and this is a unit that really hasn't been at its best so far this year. I mean, put aside the 6 interception game, even week 1 against the Bengals, Decker and Marshall weren't even the best wide receivers on the Jets. It was Quincy Enunwa. So I guess if we're going to look at a silver lining, it's the fact that Quincy Enunwa has played by far the best football of his career and looks like a legitimate threat in a legitimate NFL offense. The only problem is, how legitimate is this offensive threat if 2 of the top targets are either not 100% or not playing? So it's a really tough blow for the Jets. And yes, I know they have a tough opponent this week, but going forward, this has got to be something to monitor. This may not be a 1-week tough matchup thing. This may be, can Marshall and can Decker stay healthy throughout the course of a season? Last year, that was something that the Jets could really benefit from, was having number 15 and 87 to rely on every game. So far this year, that hasn't been the case. So yes, Enunwa's presence is really helping, but you have to wonder at what point could it start catching up to the offense.
Right, and we don't really know, how Enunwa will play when he's getting the bulk of defensive attention. I mean, he's sort of been that nice third fiddle in this passing offense, but that was because defenses were keying on Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, Matt Forte. So now that he's going to be really one of the main cogs in this passing offense, will he be as effective? That I'm not so sure of. I will say this: I would pick up Quincy Enunwa in your fantasy football leagues, especially with Marshall already being hobbled. I've got him in one of my leagues already, so he could be a guy who's going to see an enhanced role in this Jets passing offense. Speaking of passing offense,
he's got to be like 4,000 in FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably get him for very cheap if you're a daily player, and you can probably snag him on waivers right now if you are a season-long player. So a little bit of fantasy tidbits for you. This could be a fantasy tidbit too, our next topic. The Jets care about tight ends. Who knew? Unfortunately, the guy they brought in is 4 days removed from a DUI and was in jail. The Jets have brought in former Buccaneers tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins, pretty much off the streets. The Bucs let him go earlier this week after Seferian-Jenkins was pulled over for DUI and he was put in jail. And this is a really interesting move because Seferian-Jenkins has been an embattled player throughout his 3-year career, a guy who a lot of people thought had a lot of talent when he came out for the NFL draft out of Washington. And he's been a guy who motivation and off-field issues have been a problem for. Former second-round pick. The talent is there, but can the Jets get that talent out of him is my question.
The good news for Seferian-Jenkins, and Brandon Marshall acknowledged this, is he has Brandon Marshall, and that will be really nice for him to have a veteran who can kind of take him under his wing. So that's nice for Seferian-Jenkins. The only problem is, first of all, Chan Gailey doesn't utilize tight ends in his offense. He enjoys those 4 and sometimes 5 wide receiver sets, and especially with 2 pass-catching running backs, Matt Forte and Bilal Powell, I don't really know how much room in the offense there is for Seferian-Jenkins. Add on to the fact that, A, he doesn't know the offense yet. I mean, he didn't even go to practice today. And B, the Jets couldn't even get it to work with Jason Morrow, a guy who was under Gailey's offense last year. And it's a questionable situation for the Jets. It's a questionable signing, not only because of his arrest, but I don't know if he will be an immediate impact on the offense. And it looks like Matt got a big phone call from some sources. So what's just in, Matt? Any other news?
Nothing's just in. What's just in is I don't know what the Jets are doing with this move. I think someone maybe view it as a low risk, potentially high reward sort of acquisition, and it is in the respect that the Jets only owe him about $670,000, I believe, and then he's off. I mean, he's done. His contract is up after this season. So it's really not much of a financial risk or a long-term risk for a team that doesn't have a ton of cap space. I just don't think it pans out. I think this is a guy who, this was his second DUI. He had one earlier when he played for Washington. And it's just like, I don't know, is he really a guy you can trust? And I understand that, the talent is there, and he was taken just 11 picks before the Jets took Jason Morrow, who they cut, 2 months ago. So I understand the talent is evident, but we haven't really seen much of it from Seferian-Jenkins. Through his 3-year career, 45 catches, 603 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's in 3 seasons. And that's in an offense where the Bucs 2 or 3 years ago, they didn't have Jameis Winston. Mike Evans was just an emerging guy. Vincent Jackson was there, but he was pretty much the only guy. So, the Buccaneers took this guy expecting him to be an impact player, and he's been nothing but a nuisance and a distraction. I also read a report that he got kicked out of practice one day for just not being prepared. That was this offseason. This guy has been on thin ice with a Tampa Bay team that isn't very good. So it's a little concerning that this guy couldn't, stick around in an offense that, is pretty, dearth of tight end talent.
Right. And I would say, you said risk reward, and I think that's why the Jets made the move. Do I think it'll pan out? Not particularly. I don't think they'll get anything out of it. But why not take a chance? I mean, you mentioned this guy has the talent, and the Jets have veterans at the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, the running back position. Even, throw Kellen Davis in there. I know he's not, a top-tier starting tight end, to say the least, but at least it's some guy with some years under his belt. So give him a chance. I understand why the Jets made this move. I don't think it'll pan out, but I do understand it.
Yeah, I understand it. I just don't think much will come out of this. I think this will be a guy who gets an opportunity early on. And, if he sticks, great. But, I hate to say it, but he's kind of a bum. And he's been a bum his past 3 years. He's gotten second chances. This is his third chance. And a lot of people, I don't know if this move will really go over well among, sort of Jets Nation here. And this doesn't really set a great example for, guys who are coming off of pretty serious infractions with the law and, getting a chance 3 days removed from being in jail. Let's move on to another more tragic topic or a good topic if you're a cynical person. The Jets have released Milliner. It is finally over. The wait is over, and Milliner is no longer a New York Jet. And this was something that was looming once the Jets put him on injured reserve following training camp as they got their roster down to 53 players. But it is officially over. The relationship has been severed. D. Milliner is no longer a Jet, and he ends his career, the number 9 overall pick in the 2013 draft. He ends his career with 21 games played in 4 seasons, 63 tackles, 3 interceptions. He's played 8 games since his rookie year. Max, I mean, I don't really know how much there is to say about this other than this was a move that had to happen, because if you're not healthy, what's your value in the NFL?
Right, and this move, we saw it coming since the Jets put him on that injured reserve list. I will say the timing of it is a bit of a surprise, just because, I mean, you can't speculate, but you don't know how he's doing health-wise, and you don't know how other players are looking in practice. But I will say this, as far as the Jets cornerbacks heading into week 4, Justin Burris made a nice play last week, if you want to take a positive note from that otherwise horrendous Kansas City game. Justin Burris made a nice play. We've seen Marcus Williams and Buster Skrine and Darrelle Revis. They've all stayed on the field for better or for worse so far this season. So I don't think the Jets needed that cornerback. They also have Dexter McDougal on practice squad just in case of an injury. So the Jets have options. They didn't need D. Milliner. And as far as the future of D. Milliner, well, it's safe to say his Jets tenure is officially over and he will never don the green white again. But basically what D. Milliner has right now in his situation is he will enter the waiver pool where the other 31 teams will get a chance to pick him up based on record from worst to best. And if no one picks him up, he's a free agent. And even though he was on the Jets injured reserve mat, he will get a chance to be signed to another team's active roster. So just speculating here, if he is healthy or if he is healthy later in the season, he will get it here. He could get a chance to play for another team.
Yeah, the Jets could be doing him a favor in that respect rather than kind of stashing him on IR for so long. Maybe I know it was only a hamstring injury, and I don't remember it being overly serious. Maybe if he is healthy, the Jets just did him a favor now rather than, if he's on IR, he has to wait 8 weeks before he can return. So maybe they're just trying to, help everybody move on. And that would be a respectable move from the Jets organization. I understand that. This is just a sign of a regime failure. I mean, this was John Idzik's first draft pick, and he completely whiffed. And if he doesn't get Sheldon Richardson with the number 13 overall pick, the 2013 NFL draft would be a complete disaster for the New York Jets. So this is just a sign of, John Idzik's failure, and Mike Maccagnan's trying to revive the franchise and pick up the pieces. So this was something that was, as we said, it was looming. I think it was something where we didn't expect it to happen this quickly, and I think we both thought heading into the season Milliner was going to at least get a chance as a former first-round pick to show his talent.
Especially since there's no Antonio Cromartie anymore, and the Jets, could have
the Jets are pretty
explored
thin.
Options. Yeah, they could have explored options outside of Darrelle Revis, but you couldn't take advantage of that opportunity. A familiar theme through his career with the Jets. And Matt, I hate to bring it up again, but I mean, you look at that, between 2011, 12, and 13, that's, a couple of first-round picks. I mean, they cut ties with Quentin Coples last year, cut ties with D. Milliner today. And then looking forward, Geno Smith might be on his way out after this year. So I know he's a second-round pick, and so is Jason Morrow. But that's, your first and second-round picks. Those are your guys you want to build around for a draft class. And here we are, and we're looking at a couple of consecutive years. Throw Stephen Hill in there if you want. A couple of consecutive years with really bad draft picks at the top of the draft. Now, the good news is the new Jets GM, Mike Maccagnan, looks like he struck gold with Leonard Williams, who has played very, very well so far in year number 2. And Calvin Pryor improved, but hasn't been great so far this year. So looks like the last couple of years might be a little bit better, but you wonder, especially with the franchise this old, especially on the offensive side, how much better could the Jets be if they hit on those draft picks in the early 2010s?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the 2012 through 24 draft classes, Jets have already parted ways with 6 of their first through third round picks from those 3 drafts. So you look at it. Demario Davis, third-round pick in 2012. Stephen Hill, second round. The entire top of their 2012 draft is gone in Coples, Hill, and Demario Davis. D. Milliner is now gone. He was the first overall, or their first round pick in the 2013 draft. Geno Smith, taken in the second round of that same draft, could be on his way out after this season. Jason Morrow is gone. Dexter McDougal doesn't seem to be turning into anything. Even if you want to extend to the fourth round picks, Jalen Saunders and Shaq Evans, gone. So, I mean, and that was the draft where Idzik held on to all 12 of his picks rather than trading some of them. So, it's hard to find a GM who struck out harder in the draft than John Idzik. Then again, he did land Quincy Nunlin in the sixth round of the 2014 draft, so you give him that. But
and panning out so far.
Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty much the epitome of the regime failure of the John Idzik era. And again, this is Mike Maccagnan sort of cleaning house in a sense, and we don't really know how his first two draft classes are going to pan out either. You look at Devin Smith, who's on the PUP list. You look at Lorenzo Malden, who's not doing a whole lot, not being that impactful second-year player we expected. Bryce Petty, nobody knows what's going to happen with him. They took a second-round pick on Christian Hackenberg, who apparently doesn't seem to be very close to playing anytime soon. So, while the Jets are cleaning house with the old regime's draft picks, we're still not sold on the new regime, and it's going to be an uphill battle for this roster to get replenished with younger talent. And as we've said before, it's a veteran-laden team. So you got to be able to replenish that roster with some impactful draft picks. Whether you say that's happened yet for Mike Maccagnan is, up to your estimation. Right now, I'd say he's done an okay job.
Right, and the thing is, this roster is a playoff contending team. They are closer to competing in the playoffs than they are rebuilding, and they're in that weird in-between stage. But because of the talent they have, and we've said this throughout the offseason, this team is closer to a playoff team than the Cleveland Browns or some of the 0-3 teams. And to test this week against Seattle, we mentioned their defense, especially that secondary, looks really, really good yet again. But their offense is struggling, and who knows if Russell Wilson will play. Pete Carroll actually said today that he wouldn't be surprised if Russell Wilson didn't play. So it's something that this is a big test for the Jets. And 0-2 in the AFC to a pair of AFC wildcard competitors and a really, really disheartening loss to Kansas City. So this roster has a big test this week in Week 4. So I guess we lost Matt, so I'll take over the reins of the host, I guess. Temporary switch up. But anyway, thank you for watching this Jet Fuel live rundown. Hope you joined us live. If not, and you're watching back, let us know in the comments section what you think about some of the Jets' moves. Do you think they can get a win against Seattle on Sunday? And do you think that D. Milliner can find another team before the end of the season? Once again, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and on Facebook and all that. Matt is at Real Matt Barbado. I am at mmarcilla98. The website at New York Jet Fuel. And of course, check out the website nyjetfuel.com for your New York Jets coverage. Thank you for watching the live Jet Fuel Rundown.